Well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on building and protecting the destination brand. My name is Jim McCall from DNMI. We'll begin the presentation shortly. Just a few housekeeping notes before we get started. If you have any questions, we'll be accepting them throughout the webinar. So you can submit questions through the questions panel on the GoTo dashboard, and I will be serving those up to our panelists at the end of the presentation. We will also be recording this webinar and sharing the presentation slides. So be on the lookout for an email about 4 business days from now with that recording. And with that being said, I will now get us started and pass this over to Paul Ouimet, the Managing Director of DestinationNEXT. Paul?
Well, thank you, Jim, and hello everyone, and welcome to our second DestinationNEXT webinar. Our topic today, destination brand development, is a critical one for DMOs and CVBs around the world, and I think that's evidenced by the over 300 registrations that we've had for this webinar today. I think we've got 2 great speakers here who are going to shed some light on this topic. The first speaker is Bruce McMillan, the President and CEO of Bandwidth Management and Consulting. And then we also have Gary Sherwin, who's the President and CEO of Visit Newport Beach, Inc. So we're looking forward to their comments. Just before I turn it over to them, I wanted to just address why we picked this topic as our first webinar on building the strength of your destination. And I think, as many of you know, brand is one of the 10 variables in our assessment model looking at destination strength. And now, so far, we've received about 250 assessments from destinations literally around the world. And what's been interesting is, I think, 2 really key takeaways on destination strength. The first one is that when we look at all 10 of the variables for destination strength, brand is number 1. It has been consistently considered to be the most important dimension of a destination, and this applies both for leisure markets as well as the meetings and convention market. So it's a critical element for every destination. And disappointingly, I think many destinations are actually struggling with brand. It is not one of the high-performing variables. It's in the lower group of variables. So it's one that we believe in the work we've done so far that destination brand is an area that many DMOs and CVBs are struggling with in many communities. I think the second item that we've discovered in a lot of the workshops that we've done is that there's a lot of confusion about what branding is and isn't. And this is really not just about logos and tagline development. This has really evolved into a science with some very sophisticated processes and work that has to be done. And I think this is likely to be only the first of several webinars that we will have on this topic. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Bruce McMillan to do the first part of the presentation. Over to you, Bruce.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, everybody. I'm going to take about the next 25 minutes to really walk you through 3 components. First, I'm going to introduce how we got to this point through the DestinationNEXT project process, go through the evolution of how DMOs and destinations have been undertaking brand development, and then talk about what, in a DestinationNEXT world, the role of a DMO will be as envisioned in DestinationNEXT. Go through a few best and next practices, which are also in the Phase 2 report of DestinationNEXT. And then I'm going to throw it to Gary Sherwin, who is the CEO of the Newport Beach CVB, who's going to walk you through really sort of the on-the-ground, what it's like to lead a destination through a comprehensive brand advocacy and development program. So you'll have the benefit of his experience. So with that, as you know, DestinationNEXT has been received huge amounts of readership, and the key of it was we surveyed over 400 global DMO leaders. We had a panel of 20 business and marketing leaders, not necessarily in the destination marketing or travel space, but of all walks. And it really got us to this point that said, to be successful in today's marketplace, destination leadership and management was not just about promotion, but it's really about evolving and being a steward over the physical experience itself. That's where the whole concept of destination branding is going. And what that means for the response for DMOs is that your role is going to grow. It's broadened. Might be a challenge to rethink your roles, your relationships, and also your partners. So that's what we're going to talk about and show some examples of that and show how we got to where we are at this point. You know, just to start off, to build on what Paul said, this is not going to be a webinar on great logos and taglines. And branding is a very complex process. It's equal parts art, science, and magic. So just to make sure we're all on the same page, I grabbed a few quotes from a number of thought leaders around brand that present sort of the direction that we're going. And I think in Elizabeth Tallerman's place, she talks about branding as a mental model. And you know, if you look at destination branding, city branding refers to all the activities that are undergone for the purpose of turning a city from a location into a destination. And that's really what we see our role as destination marketers. But nowhere in that definition does it talk about logos and taglines. So how have we moved through the process of evolving destination brand approach? Well, it started very simply initially through a simple central message, and where the marketer was a trusted intermediary and they had exclusive proprietary knowledge. And it really looked something like this, where if you could call it, the brand construct was really closed, and essentially the government or business that brought out the message did it through information broadcast out into an audience. And that's really where it started. And I've got a few examples of initial destination marketing. I make no comment or editorial about the content, but this is where it started, with helping destination marketing started, with helping bring people to countries for settlement purposes, evolved into the Olympic Games and the World's Fair. But essentially, it was broadcast engagement at its finest. Branding approach 2 really became almost the classic Mad Men, Don Draper approach. It was about logos and taglines. It was about frequency and reach and channel domination. And the DMO found its role essentially as a brand marketing messenger, where it took the stories and experiences from the community stakeholders, brought them out to the visitor, received the feedback and transactions back, and put them back to the community. So essentially the role was as brand storyteller, as intermediary management. And we all know some of the great examples of logos that were developed, like I Love New York. Print advertising became complex with great imagery, celebrities. And then you had the web, of course. And with that, the same type of ad approach where it was all about frequency and reach and coverage. But something happened. Our industry got really successful. It grew significantly. Experiences and destinations grew. Stories and destinations grew. The public became involved in it. And pretty soon, the information that the DMO as brand marketing messenger got so complex, it was almost overwhelming. So visitors, instead of going through the DMO, they went around the channel, went directly back to the community. And pretty soon, the ability of the DMO as messenger to manage those messages and audience grew beyond the ability of their ability. It got expensive, it got complicated. So what you got, the traditional brand construct effectively dissolved. And it had to be a different way. And that's what DestinationNEXT puts forward. So we have this disruption in destination branding, and the simple fact of the matter is the destination can no longer control the message. So we have to find another way to do that. And that's the roadmap that DestinationNEXT puts forward for the transformational opportunities. So if you look at what DestinationNEXT offers, it's really two very important points. First, the future of DMO leadership within the is broadened significantly. And that means DMOs are going to have to look to additional skill sets because it's about evolving the reputation for a longer-term sustainability. So while marketing will remain important, managing the brand or participating in the management of the experience starts taking on additional importance. And yes, that may mean adding new skills, and it also looks at the DMO having to forge extended relationships, new partners, because that brand is not only being consumed by visitors, it's also being consumed by investors, by people looking to relocate to their communities. So exploring those new partnerships takes on a very significant importance, and collaborating with those other stakeholders to manage and evolve the brand becomes part of the role of the DMO. So whereas we had destination branding 2.0 as where the DMO was essentially messenger, the DestinationNEXT construct moves the DMO inside the brand, collaborating on the development of new stories and new experiences, and yes, new partners and new policies. And the key for the DMO is the DMO becomes the access point to some of these audiences, whether you're an investor, a visitor, a business. That puts the DMO in a whole new, I believe, exciting position where you're not just reacting to the development of the brand, you're actually collaborating and co-creating with the stakeholders in it. And yes, you'll still do the marketing, but your value proposition in the community starts to evolve as well. So if we look at sort of the shift, the transformation from DMO as brand marketing messenger to brand advocate and experience collaborator, we look at 5 areas. First is the engagement focus. Whereas the messenger only starts with engaging the tourism industry and the marketplace, the advocate engages multiple communities and multiple marketplaces. That brand is not just for tourism. So to evolve it, the DMO is going to have to look at multiple engagement points. The next part is your business. Yes, you're still going to have a requirement to generate business transaction for the tourism industry, but it goes beyond that. It's a longer time horizon. It's enhancing and in creating that compelling destination experience and sustaining it in the long run. And we all know plenty of examples of communities that have been very successful and then it waned because their experience was not properly managed. The audience target for the brand, as brand marketing messenger, yes, it's tourism and business events clients, but suddenly that brand takes on additional appeal to businesses, investors, event managers, film location managers. That brand has to be consistent across all of those audiences in order to be successful, and the DMO is going to play a role in that. Product development, that's something that the DMO hasn't always had a role in. It maybe as collecting destination and marketplace data, but now it becomes collaborating with investors, whether it's a convention center, an attraction, or maybe even some new infrastructure. The DMO can play a role, and in some cases, and I'll show you an example of that, the DMO might take a financial risk in that. And that's something that can be scary, but maybe just what needs to happen. And finally, a DMO is brand marketing messenger in terms of brand stewardship. A lot of it was compliance-based. The brand police image comes to mind. Now in the advocacy and experience collaboration role, it's about ensuring the long-term sustainability of that brand message and protecting it when something goes wrong and evolving it to grow it. So those are kind of the 5 elements of the transformation from brand marketing messenger to experience collaborator. Now there's benefits and there's challenges. Obviously the benefits are an expanded focus, and it's not just about building short-term but long-term legacy and sustainability. Another benefit is having a consistent and integrated brand. There's nothing worse than destinations that have different brands for different roles, and I think Gary's leadership in Newport Beach is a great example of when it works, how remarkable it can be. Further, by a DMO playing this role as brand advocate, the DMO gets positioned more as a leader in the community and in the marketplace, as a champion of that brand, and yes, having to manage it when there are challenges. And finally, expanded community visibility, because instead of just dealing with tourism stakeholders, the DMO is reaching into economic development and some of the business stakeholders, and having that profile and that presence in the community and evolving the value proposition accordingly provides a lot of equity for the organization, particularly when it comes to funding. Now, it's not without challenges. It's a transformation, so that means there's going to be some change in your role. Scope of focus in the community changes. It's not just about filling beds and dates, rates, and space. There's a different focus, and typically that's going to require some non-traditional DMO skill sets. Product development comes to one, data management. And then the performance measurement horizon for a brand is not quarterly. It's a much longer term horizon, and some of those success measures are not transactional, and they're less than traditional, and that's one of the great debates. How do you measure the equity of a brand? And then finally, if you get into the product development business, it could require business risk. And there are a number of DMOs, and I'll talk about one in a moment, that made some investments in their community to evolve their products, and they are now, have that risk management aspect of it. So those are all sort of the benefits and challenges of this evolving brand development role that are envisioned in DestinationNEXT. So now I'm going to talk some examples of activation strategies that are found in the DestinationNEXT report. And in the phase 1 of the destination report, seven activation strategies were identified. And you'll see, they're numbered here, sort of random numbers, but I think we had 40 total strategies that were identified in phase 1 of DestinationNEXT, and you can see that 7 of the top 20 were related to brand. So I want to show a few examples of that these are real. The DMOs right now are actually pursuing them and seeing some great benefits. One that was actually I just discovered last week, because in DMAI's weekly newsletter, comes from Brussels. And if you're aware of what's happening in Brussels as a result of the terrorist attacks and some of the profile that happened in the fall in the wake of the Paris attacks, Brussels was not seen as a particularly safe city, and it's a major tourist destination. So the DMO and some community partners got together, and they essentially erected some phone kiosks throughout the city. And you can make a phone call, voice over IP, and somebody in Brussels will pick up the phone who's standing outside in one of their great plazas or somewhere and tell you what's going on, to show that it's really safe. And this is a great example of not just brand advocacy and dealing with some disruptive bad press about a destination, but they did it by engaging the community. And that shows how it brings the community into the equation in terms of dealing with something that is vital to the entire destination. So if you get a chance, go check it out. It's a great example of how a destination is dealing with advocating and protecting its brand when a crisis comes up. The next example is Guam, and as you can probably imagine, Guam's all about its marvelous beaches, and Guam has to compete. Its #1 competitor is Hawaii. And unfortunately, what was happening in Guam a couple of years ago is the DMO noticed that the beach was not in the type of shape that would attract visitors. And pretty soon the DMO decided that if our beach isn't going to be successful, our sustainability as a destination was not going to endure. So the DMO there now spends up over 30% of its budget to not only keep the beach clean, but also to provide amenities on the beach for visitors that go there, because they recognize the value excuse me, of that asset in terms of sustaining its tourism industry. And lo and behold, last year, Guam had a record tourism visitation. And it shows how the DMO can not only take a role in protecting and evolving the brand, but also in sustainability and even in some cases product development. And that's the type of exercise that DestinationNEXT considers when it contemplates for the evolution and protection and the new role of DMOs and brands. Next one is Grapevine. If you don't know Grapevine, Texas, it's a community outside of Dallas of about 50,000 people. And if you haven't heard of it, Grapevine, through the leadership of the DMO, has taken that small community to the point where now they receive 15 million visitors a year. And they did it through product development, through creating a brand that was anchored by product development. They produced festivals. They, in fact, helped erect and transform buildings in the community into heritage buildings. They even own a railroad. And to do this, they had to take the financial risk of it, and it paid off. And now, as I said, Grapevine has some 15 million visitors a year. The economic impact of tourism is in the multiple billions, and it is an iconic destination in North Texas. And they keep it that way through refreshing their products, through aggressive brand development, and the economic development strategy for Grapevine is tourism, and they are all linked and integrated carefully in order to provide the benefits for the city. And it's a wonderful example. There's a case study in the phase 2 of the Next Practices Guide of DestinationNEXT, and I encourage you to read it as an example of a destination that really took product development to the next level. But they did it. They had to take some risks to make it happen, but it paid off for them significantly. Another approach to strategy for brand development is something that Beverly Hills has done through thought leadership. And we all can sort of understand Beverly Hills as a luxury destination. But Beverly Hills pursued a content strategy where they undertook research of the luxury market. And they published it recently. And it provides a lot of considerable great insight to the habits of they have a great acronym for it, the ultra-rich, high net worth individuals. And it has great intel. It effectively links Beverly Hills with some of the other great leisure brand destinations in the world, like London, like Tokyo, like Paris. But it all does it through content development and thought leadership around luxury marketing. So it's a great resource piece for anybody, but by Beverly Hills creating it and publishing it, they've evolved and linked their brand with other comparable destinations around the world. And content development is something that DestinationNEXT makes particularly reference to for DMOs for the future, because that's what consumers and visitors are looking for. Another one of the strategies contemplated in DestinationNEXT for brand development is bringing the community into tourism and connecting tourism to the quality of life. New Orleans has done a particularly awesome job at this. They created an initiative called New Orleans Will. You can go onto their social media and websites, and in there they actually publish and engage and publish information about New Orleans contribution, tourism contribution to the community, and bring the community right into the story. so that the community knows that tourism is a considerable, compelling part of their identity. And on the other side of it, when you ask people why they like New Orleans so much, so often they talk about the people. And so it's a great symbiotic relationship that the people are reinforcing the brand essence of New Orleans, and at the same time that brand is enhancing the community quality of life in the destination. It's a great example of bringing the community into the discussion and having that community enrich the brand, very much similar to that construct where the DMO brings and evolves that in the community and in the marketplace. Brand, as I said, is not just about transactions and driving immediate, it's about long-term sustainable development. And a number of destinations have pursued what's called a tourism master plan. Vancouver, Greater Palm Springs, Indianapolis, and even Winnipeg have all are either published or in the process of creating tourism master plans. And essentially what it does is it brings the community together to look at their assets, to look at their community, and to look at their marketplace, and to create a long-term roadmap to ensure that there's responsible and sustainable development of the community, of the brand, in the marketplace and in the community. And it's a fairly substantial undertaking, but if you're a community that depends on tourism, like some of the destinations I just mentioned, this is what brand leadership is. It looks, and as the former CEO of Tourism Vancouver said, it's cathedral thinking, because you want to leave your destination in a better place when you first inherited it. And finally, DestinationNEXT contemplated DMOs as taking new partnerships in the community, and one of which is getting a lot of coverage, and a lot of destinations are starting to do this, is greater integration with economic development. And Sydney, Australia has done a great job of this through their Sydney Shines program, which is their convention ambassadors. And what they do is they bring together thought leaders and business leaders, and they help position the destination, in addition to its considerable tourism assets, they position it also with its knowledge and economic assets as a reason for their ambassadors to bring their colleagues or invite their colleagues to their communities for an event. And it really talks about, they use economic development stakeholders in the community and investors to speak for them. And so, yes, they're a wonderful destination, but the partnership with economic development also recognizes that whether you're relocating a business or bringing an international congress, is that it's a business decision. And in addition to speaking the language of tourism, you also have to speak the language of business. And your brand has to speak that language of business as well. So Sydney's done a wonderful job. In fact, they call their DMO business event Sydney. They call their DMO to reflect the fact that they also need to speak the language of business in their marketing activities. So what I've tried to do here is run you through the context that DestinationNEXT contemplates for the evolution of the role of brand development for DMOs. I've given you a few examples, and you obviously we'll make this deck available to you after the meeting, after the webinar. I'm now going to turn it over to Gary Sherwin from Newport Beach, who has fantastic examples and in-depth knowledge of how to integrate the brand across multiple stakeholders and bring it to life in their community. Gary.
Great. Thank you, Bruce, and good afternoon or good morning, depending on where all of you are. It's great to be with you today. And Bruce gave a really good comprehensive overview of destination branding in all of its forms, and it bears repeating that branding is not a responsibility that is left to an ad agency or just to the creative shop. And probably I think it was in 2004, I co-authored a book on destination branding for DMAI, and I thought at the time when I was writing it that this book would be out of date someday, but I've still found that there's a fair amount of confusion about branding out there, and that a lot of folks still think this is about logos and taglines. And we've kind of emphasized that point in this webinar, is that this is really much more than that. I think Bruce laid out a comprehensive plan on how destinations really go beyond just simply messaging your brand. It's about also delivering your brand. A brand really, at the end of the day, is your most important strategic asset. It is really the entity that really should be championed by the CEO and delivered by the staff. Everyone should be very brand-centric, and if you're wondering what your destination brand is and how you go about delivering it, it's really boils down to really two critical elements, and that is first understanding what your functional benefits are and what your emotional benefits are as a destination. And this is usually determined through a research-driven process where you do a kind of a brand research project to really understand what are those elements that define you as a destination. And this is usually what I call the stuff of a destination, those things that are the usual things that we're out there promoting, whether it's a beach or a theme park or shopping or what have you, those things that clearly define you. And secondly, understanding what are those emotional things that also define you. And understanding it not just simply from your perspective, but understanding it from your consumer's perspective, understanding it from your stakeholders' perspective, so that you have a very clear idea without your own bias as to what really differentiates your community in the marketplace. And that's really where you start in this entire process, is to get a clear idea of what your brand is, because the way you're selling your destination may in fact not be consistent with the way your destination is perceived or understood by the people who buy you, or maybe even members of your community. And when you're out there talking about their destination, is your community aligned with the messages that you need to convey about your destination? I've seen in a lot of cities where the DMO is on one page and the community is on another page in terms of what makes that community unique and distinctive. And that dilutes and confuses your brand in the marketplace, because it's essential that you get a shared agreement on what your unique experience is. We're not just selling hotel rooms, and we're not selling attractions, we're not selling transportation. We're selling a unique experience that can only be discovered or hopefully enjoyed in your community. And getting a clear understanding of it from the visitor standpoint, from the stakeholder standpoint, is critical to you defining what your brand is. Because before you go and develop your brand, you first need to get clarity on what your brand is all about, and getting a shared understanding within your community so that everybody is completely aligned as to what differentiates you. So I always suggest it's a research-driven process, being able to kind of facilitate that, going through it so that at the end of the day you have a brand promise, something that again defines or explains what those functional and emotional benefits are. And once you have clarity on that, then you can begin the other process of saying, okay, if this is who we are and we understand this is what differentiates us and makes us unique, and our stakeholders understand that point and our visitors understand that point, are we in fact walking the talk? Are we in fact delivering on the messages that we're out there conveying to the visitor? Because the big danger in today's environment, and this is the reason why DestinationNEXT has made brand development one of its key pillars, is that we live in an era where we can promote whatever we want about our destination, and then when somebody comes and experiences our destination and they find a gap, they see it as, well, I thought it was this, but in fact it is this. What do? They go to social media channels and they can absolutely cut us up, because they can go on TripAdvisor and say, well, this is a destination that promotes itself offering this, but when I went there, this is really what I saw. So all of our visitors now are critics, and they have the power to completely undermine our brand if in fact we are not consistent about delivering on it. So that's really why we're placing such an emphasis with Destination Next, is making sure that we are in alignment with our experience and our messaging. So let me share with you a little bit about what we've tried to do here in Newport Beach. And we began this brand exercise more than probably about 9-10 years ago, where we went through this brand development process. We researched what our brand was. We had clarity on it. We understood where our visitors were coming from. We understood where our stakeholders were coming from. We had a complete buy-in on what our brand is about. And through Visit Newport Beach, we began to go out and communicate that brand. Subsequently, though, I had a meeting with our then mayor, who was a very savvy guy. And this is one of the important things, too, is that, brand development is not left just to the DMO. Brand has to be completely supported and bought into by the elected leadership. Because as I say to our city council every year when I go do my presentation, they're as much about brand stewards as I am, because they actually vote to create and invest in the product that we're out there promoting. So they need to be as much aligned and as much bought into this whole brand strategy as the marketers are. And I met with our mayor at the time, and being a pretty savvy guy himself from the private sector, he said, you have all this infrastructure to go out and communicate the Newport Beach brand. But there are some other entities here in town that are also communicating the Newport Beach brand. And I'm not sure that everyone is on the same page. And I think we need to make sure that there's alignment, that there is consistency, there is a single voice that is out there communicating about our destination and what it offers to people. So I thought he had a great idea there. And what I'm going to propose, I will preference this by saying I don't know if this will work in every community as how we aligned ourselves, because there are political contexts here. There are sometimes when people want to change alignment of what people are doing in communities, that doesn't always go down really well. We're a fairly small community of about 84,000 people. For those of you who don't know where we are, we're about an hour south of Los Angeles in Orange County, fairly affluent community, but it's small enough that we were able to go ahead and manifest a lot of change to be able to kind of bring our brand into what we see as a single, more coordinated approach to telling our story. So where this started was with a restaurant group we have in town. They are actually funded through a business improvement district. It's the Newport Beach Restaurant Association. They have a board of directors. They have resources to market the Newport Beach restaurant product, and they've been doing it by themselves through an independent contractor now for several years. The feeling was that they were operating in a silo, that they weren't completely aligned with what we're doing. So after probably about almost a year of discussions, that group decided to come and work with us and actually contract with us to do their marketing for them, knowing that we would align the destination brand with the restaurant brand. And when this came about and we had this opportunity, we brought this to the board of directors of Visit Newport Beach. And we said, listen, there's a new strategy we're going to employ, which is really a more coordinated, integrative brand messaging marketing organization going forward that's going to extend itself beyond just tourism. And our board said, listen, we're very happy with what's going on with Visit Newport Beach. We don't want it diluted, but perhaps instead of having these entities contract with Visit Newport Beach, we create a new umbrella organization of which Visit Newport Beach would fall under, and what we call it Newport Beaching Company. So it becomes a master marketing organization. So the program of work that is underway with Visit Newport Beach isn't diminished at all. So on the chart that you see on your screen, we created a new nonprofit 501c6, just like Visit Newport Beach, umbrella organization to handle all of these new responsibilities. The only change that we made to Visit Newport Beach is that our entire marketing team and as well as myself and our finance department, would now be working for Newport Beach and Company versus Visit Newport Beach. And that Visit Newport Beach would now contract with Newport Beach and Company, much like you would contract with a marketing company. So this umbrella organization then becomes sort of the custodian for all of these entities that eventually fell together underneath it. So after creating that, the Restaurant Association contracted with us. We created their program of work. We developed synergies between Visit Newport Beach and the restaurant group, and we actually hired a full-time person that they pay for, but is under our direction to support the restaurant marketing, and that restaurant marketing then is integrated with everything else that we're doing. So that came together. Subsequently, our Chamber of Commerce has been the custodian for about 107 years for a Christmas boat parade. It's one of our signature events. Huge event in the community where we have all these yachts lit up, about 100+ boats, and it goes over 5 nights during the holiday season. Gets a lot of media coverage, but we've all felt that it has been an underutilized asset, and from both a marketing perspective as well as a sponsorship perspective. So under this new arrangement, our Chamber of Commerce agreed to contract with us, pay us a fee to basically be the marketers and sponsorship coordinators for the Newport Beach Christmas Boat Parade. They still operate the parade, but we handle all the marketing, we handle the sponsorship, and we also handle what we call the event enhancements. It was a 107-year-old parade that never had a grand marshal. One of the things that we brought to the table is, listen, if we want to get press, we need to have a celebrity grand marshal, not unlike the Pasadena Tournament of Roses on New Year's Day. We since have done that. We've added, this is the, we just completed the 2nd year of our agreement with them. We have a celebrity grand marshal. Every night we actually have a different celebrity grand marshal because it's a 5-night parade. And we've gotten twice the amount of media coverage, and we've doubled the amount of sponsorship because of that. And with that agreement, it's a revenue share, so we get money when we sell sponsorship. The Chamber gets some money as well. The next box is Newport Beach TV, and this one actually came out of our city manager. The city manager had approached us and said, listen, I understand what you're doing with Newport Beach and Company. I completely get this integrated approach to telling the Newport Beach story. So what I'd like to do is maybe talk with you about taking over the contract for that. Now, the thought of us operating a local TV station didn't really set us on fire initially, but really what we saw this as is an opportunity to create rich video content that, yes, could be used locally, but then could be repurposed and used on all of our other media channels. The restaurant group has a website. Visit Newport Beach has a website. You'll see, I'm going to talk about some neighborhoods in a moment. They all have websites. What if we were able to get a mechanism that would be supported under this contract with the city to create video content? Because as you know, video drives everything right now in terms of marketing. We could come up with 2 or 3 minute short videos, repurpose them for various websites, use that locally, and that turned out to be a phenomenal idea. We're now in the 2nd year of that. Our board of directors actually invested and built a complete studio facility with offices for the staff. The staff is all covered under a contract we have with the city, and we can operate the station like a PBS station. So for those of you overseas, those are public stations, public broadcasting stations. We can't sell commercials, but we can sell sponsorship. So we can operate it on a revenue-driven process, which means that we can make money off the station, which we can then reinvest into greater program content. This has been, I think, for us, one of the big game changers because, for example, we can create a restaurant program that subsequently we can also use on the Dine site or the Visit site, as well as use for local consumption as well. You'll see a next box about film. We eventually want to get a film commission. We know a lot of DMOs do that. Our city has not completely embraced all of that, so that has not been put together yet, but we are looking at eventually developing a film commission. And then finally, enterprise. And this really involves neighborhoods. And we actually have neighborhoods that have either a business improvement district or they receive funding for the city to market their neighborhoods expressly for tourism purposes. They've all been operating independently, and so the city said, we really want you to work with Newport Beach and Company. It'll elevate the professionalism because they all had boards, they were all working in silos, they were all hiring independent contractors, none of it was coordinated, and the city felt that there needed to be a more professional approach. So they actually incentivized these groups to say, if you will work with Newport Beach and Company, we will pay Newport Beach and Company a fee to do the marketing on your behalf, and your budget can be used for marketing expenses, meaning ad placements or hosting special events or anything like that. So we have two neighborhoods, Balboa Village, Balboa Island, that have contracted with us to do that, and we come up with a program of work. Their board approves that program of work, and that program of work then is integrated across all of our business units. Now, from a governance standpoint, we have two boards. We still have the Visit Newport Beach board. We promised them that we wouldn't mess with that, but that same board is also a Newport Beach and Company board. So when we meet, we have two agendas. We go through one, then we adjourn, then we bang the gavel, and we now have to open up the second agenda and go through those items that relate to Newport Beach and Company. Additionally, you'll see we started a foundation, and that was really to develop some sort of charitable endeavor to support the community beyond just marketing. And we've actually put together a leadership development program to help develop leaders in the community, because we felt that our future is really dependent on good quality people serving not only on our board but at the city council, chamber board, other organizations, and that was something that wasn't being done in the community, so we developed that, and it has its own board of directors, and it's really sort of a dotted line. It has its own bylaws, its own financials. It's a 501c3, so it kind of exists there. So what we've tried to do here is take the brand and systematize it and coordinate it so that anything you have coming out of our community has our fingerprints on it, and has a level of consistency in terms of messaging and also experience management as well. We work with all of the entities to make sure that the brand is being manifested both at the service level and at the product level as well. And as I said, what we're doing here is ambitious. I've been trying to look at other organizations or other cities to see if I can learn from them. I think right now we're kind of making the mistakes for everybody else. And fortunately, we haven't made too many big ones, but this is really, I think, a way of bringing the destination marketing to really a much more coordinated and effective level going forward. And even if you can't physically supervise these entities, it's important, I would suggest to everyone, to find a way to coordinate with other entities that are out there telling your destination story, so that there is alignment, even if you're not under the same roof, that there is some sort of agreement that says, here's our brand, let's all work together to talk about it in a consistent way. Even if our messaging is slightly different, the brand still stays the same. So with that, I guess I will give it back to you, Paul, and we'll maybe open it up for questions.
Super. I'll thank you, Gary and Bruce, for some great comments here, and we'll turn it over to Jim, who is going to be reviewing the questions, and we'll read them out to the panelists.
Yeah, I'll give this first question to you, Gary. We had some folks who wanted to know, you mentioned the politics that go into a lot of this. Can you talk a bit about what your message was when you reached out to these stakeholders and civic leaders to sort of get them to want to collaborate with you on destination branding rather than feel like you were impeding on their area of work?
Yeah, and I think engagement with your elected officials and your stakeholders are absolutely critical to the success of branding. They need to be brought in at the very beginning to walk them through why this brand is important, what a brand is. As we've said many times on this call, people are so confused. Well, does this mean I have to use your logo? No, this is not what we're really about. We're really about something much more profound. And any good brand process really should involve a sit-down, face-to-face with key stakeholders to explain what the initiative is, what their role would be, and how we need to have their buy-in before any brand is rolled out. Ongoing, consistent communication. You know, I think one of the things about DestinationNEXT is that the key findings is that many DMOs now are going to be more invested in community relations, community engagement, more so than they ever have. And CEOs are going to be more political leaders than they are marketing leaders in many respects. And this is one of those key elements where you really need to be able to step up and bring people into the fold and explain how other destinations now are utilizing the brand and how successful that has been in terms of your ability to compete against your competitive set. And it's been without a doubt that destinations have a clear, well-understood brand and deliver it consistently are way more successful than destinations that don't. But it involves engaging them early, explaining what's going on, explaining what the benefits are, and making sure that they're active and engaged participants from day one.
Perfect. And Bruce, this next one I'm going to give to you. This is from Ben out in Mountain View, California. You know, every new program or initiative that a DMO starts, they have to put in place metrics to determine whether or not it's being successful. Can you share your thoughts on what are some metrics and ways that DMOs and destinations can measure the effectiveness of their brand?
Sure, and Ben, that's a great question. It's something that brand marketers, not just in the destination marketing world, struggle with, but in today's day and age across all disciplines. I think it starts with what Gary talked about. It's, okay, what are the key elements of our brand that our community see as vitally important, and also our stakeholders? So perhaps you're an outdoor destination. You know, clearly, you know, if you're a national park or a state park or destination, the transactional, the quantitative side of that is probably visitors to the park. I mean, that's an easy one. But at the same time, you know, harvesting and being able to understand the conversations via social media that are happening about your destination or about key attributes of your destination. There are tools out there. One I would talk about is something called Radian6. I'm sure many of you have heard of it and or have used it. You can measure sentiments about your destination on particular elements. So if you're that outdoor destination, you can use Radian6 to monitor some social media conversations. Of course, you can also use traditional surveys. You know, that's sort of at the very elemental level, which can be done on a much shorter term time horizon. But then over time, using metrics like investment. Again, if you're that outdoor adventure destination, are the number of businesses in your destination growing? Are a greater percentage of visitors to your destination over time coming for the adventure travel or whatever your particular brand element is? But again, what Gary talked about, it starts with an engagement with your community stakeholders. What are the key elements, the essence of our destination that we want to bring to life, and then managing towards it? And I think because the destination isn't just about the DMO, and the DMO can certainly be the collaborator and steward in helping find those measures of success, but it really is collaborating on the development of those measures of success. And one is short-term quantitative, one is probably long-term qualitative. And I gave a few examples, but it is a very complex exercise.
And I'll weigh in too. You know, a great example was at Hilton Head Island, where they underwent a brand development exercise. And this is where it really helps make sure that it's a research-driven process. And historically, Hilton Head had always promoted itself as a golf capital. Well, when they went through this whole brand exercise, they found that golf was not the driver. It was the fact that it was upscale relaxation, of which golf was one way to achieve that. That's an important distinction. And when they learned that, they recalibrated their messaging and focused on this upscale relaxation. Once they had the campaign in place for about a year, they went back to the same people and talked to these folks again and asked them, had they come to Hilton Head, and in fact, did they feel that element of relaxation? And they in fact did, which proved to them that in fact recalibrating their messaging and then delivering on it was a much more effective way to get customer satisfaction, which they would then tell other people. So always start with some sort of research benchmark that gives you some sort of understanding, and then go back after you've actually implemented your brand program to test to see if it's working. If it is, then you're in alignment and you know you're doing the right thing. If not, you need to make your changes and recalibrate accordingly.
Perfect. And then you both mentioned collaborating with stakeholders and engagement and how important that is. So I actually wanted to throw this one over to Paul. Paul, can you talk a little bit about when you've gone through the destination workshop process, any surprises or interesting things that you've noticed going through that as far as engaging stakeholders and what their reaction has been as far as working with DMOs on branding and master plans and those types of initiatives?
I mean, I think the two things that we've learned that have come up just about every workshop. One is just how important brand is. The other thing that has been really interesting is we've started to track how millennials and other age groups are actually looking at brands of different destinations, and we are finding that millennials in many markets are actually they have a much lower opinion and perception of the destination than other age groups. And this is a major opportunity for many destinations in that if we can do more to actually increase their knowledge, understanding of the assets of the community, they can become much better ambassadors, like what we typically see in, you know, some of the business ambassadors and other types of individuals in a community. So that has been a very interesting finding that we've had here in the last couple of months.
And Jim, if I could just add, this is Bruce. Paul is reflecting what a lot of research shows, and part of the reason engaging the community is so important because of the authenticity and trust that visitors have in people that live in that community or connections that they have in that community, and the declining trust and authenticity they have in traditional advertising. So the two go hand in hand, particularly for millennials. So where a DMO is making a commitment to engage its local community and inspire them to be advocates for their community, the likelihood of them helping market the destination to whomever, and the return on that will be a lot more significant.
That's great. I think we're out of time for questions, but I will share any unanswered questions with our panelists. And before we go, I think Paul has an exciting announcement about our next DestinationNEXT webinar.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you to Bruce McMillan and Gary Sherwin for taking the time to do this this great webinar. And I think our next one in March is I think another very hot topic dealing with the sharing economy. We have confirmed Molly Turner, who is the Global Head of Civic Partnerships at Airbnb. This is a tentative date and time, but we're hoping to confirm that in the next couple of days. But we are looking at a webinar here where Molly is going to be talking about how destinations, DMOs, cities can deal with the regulatory as well as taxation issues with Airbnb and other sharing economy types of organizations. So If you're interested in that, please join us and watch for the announcements coming out from DMAI. The other thing is, if any of you have any suggestions on other potential topics you would like us to address, please send those suggestions to me and Jim, and we'd be happy to try to program those into this year's webinar schedule. So on that note, I will thank everyone for your attendance and adjourn this session.